Hello everybody, welcome to Movies by McManus, the channel where we break down movies, comics, TV, books, whatever kind of media you're into, in the context of who created it and what effect it's trying to have on the world. Today we're going to be breaking down the 2019 book, Poisoner in Chief, by Stephen Kinzer. As a companion piece, I recommend watching the Netflix documentary series Wormwood, which deals with the death of the CIA scientist Frank Olson, which plays a large part in this book. Now, Poisoner in Chief follows the life story of CIA scientist Sidney Gottlieb, who was in charge of the MKULTRA experiments in the 1950s and 60s. For those who are familiar with this channel, you'll know that we also talked about MKUltra in our breakdown of Tom O'Neill's book, Chaos. But for those who are unfamiliar with the project, here's a quick review. MKUltra was a CIA program which started in the mid-50s and ended, on paper at least, in 1962, though many believe it lasted much longer than that. The main goal of MKUltra and Sidney Gottlieb's life's work in general was to answer one question: is mind control possible? And Gottlieb believed the answer to this question lied in the newly discovered drug LSD. Through the MKUltra experiments, Gottlieb tested on countless human test subjects, many against their will or willingly, but without knowledge of what they were ingesting. The subjects were given almost deadly doses of LSD, and then put through psychological tests, some of which included physical torture, with the goal of wiping their current personality and replacing it with a government-made one. With this, the government can get an enemy soldier to switch sides and reveal their secrets, or even become a covert assassin. The basic idea being that they would be an assassin without knowing it, to go back thinking everything is normal, and then, with a switch or a code word, turn into a killing machine. Now, officially, MKUltra was a failure, and in 1962, Sidney Gottlieb declared that mind control was in fact impossible. Though some researchers, like Tom O'Neill, say that the experiments were actually more successful than the government wants to admit. And if you want to learn more about that, you can watch our breakdown on his book Chaos. But Stephen Kinzer doesn't spend too much time debating on whether or not mind control is possible. Instead, focuses on the world of the CIA, which would allow a program like this to continue, and the fallout of what happened after MKUltra was revealed to the public. One of the major criticisms that many people have against Stephen Kinzer as an author is that he tends to stick to the official narrative, meaning taking the CIA's version of events as truth without speculating further. Kinzer is not the type of author to accuse the CIA of doing something that they haven't already admitted to. Though what the CIA is willing to admit to is already pretty horrific. Poisoner in Chief acts more as a cataloging of events, to bring attention to a dark side of American history that many people don't know about, compared to the documentary series Wormwood, which acts more like a call to arms, and highlights that there are many people involved with MKUltra who escape justice. So let's talk about the state of the world which led to MKUltra being formed. During World War II, American scientists were not just busy developing a nuclear bomb, but also a biological bomb. The idea being that a bomb could be covertly dropped over either Japan or Germany, releasing a disease that would kill off the majority of its population before an invasion could begin. This is important because after World War II, A lot of these bioweapon scientists would be transferred over to the early stages of Operation Artichoke, which later became MKUltra. In 1946, after realizing that the nuclear bomb was more devastating than they could have possibly imagined, these scientists needed to switch gears. And after the discovery of LSD, the US government immediately saw its potential as a bioweapon. The idea would work like this. If a city was about to be invaded, an LSD bomb could be dropped beforehand, incapacitating any soldiers or civilians with minimal long-term damage. Then the city could be invaded with little to no resistance. The US government wanted to know as much as possible about this new drug LSD. And so, the newly formed agency, the CIA, created black sites in occupied areas of Germany and China where testing can be done on German and Japanese prisoners. This is where Sidney Gottlieb comes into the story. Gottlieb was brought in by the CIA to run their new LSD experiments. He experimented on people while on LSD, or a mixture of LSD and other drugs, and subjected them to physical and mental torture. These experiments were oftentimes fatal. Which leads us to one of the most well-known scandals of the MKUltra experiments, and the main focus of the documentary series Wormwood: the death of CIA scientist Frank Olson. While these LSD experiments were being performed in American-occupied territories all over the world, their main base of operation was in Fort Detrick, Maryland. One weekend while on a work retreat, Gottlieb, either as a prank or as a legitimate experiment, decided to lace all the scientists' drinks with LSD. One of these scientists was Frank Olson, who after being drugged, came to a moral awakening, and that Monday morning, alerted his supervisors that he no longer wanted anything to do with MKUltra and wished to quit the CIA. Frank Olson quickly fell into depression, not wanting to eat or sleep, and believing that all of his food was secretly laced with LSD. So the CIA convinced him to go see a psychiatrist in New York City before fully deciding if he wanted to quit or not. Olson went to New York City with two colleagues from the CIA and met with a psychiatrist, afterwards agreeing that he would check himself into a mental health facility. But that night, Frank Olson fell to his death from the window of his hotel room. The documentary Wormwood puts forward the case that Frank Olson was in fact murdered, while Poisoner-in-Chief leaves it a bit open-ended, saying that a case could be made that Frank Olson was depressed and committed suicide, or that the CIA killed him to keep him quiet. Now, in the 1950s, this is when the idea of using LSD as a mind control serum came into play. After the Korean War, many soldiers came forward, stating that they saw American troops committing war crimes. The official stance of the United States government is that these soldiers had been brainwashed by the Koreans and made to believe that they saw something they actually didn't. Now, it's important to remember, no one in the government actually believed this. They were well aware that the Koreans did not discover the secret to mind control. But it led them to ask, is something like this actually possible? And so, Sidney Gottlieb's LSD experiments took on a new goal. Instead of testing LSD as a bioweapon, it would now be tested as a mind control weapon. And the operation was officially renamed from Operation Artichoke to now MKUltra. The goal was to see if they could brainwash an enemy soldier into switching sides. But there was also a secondary goal in mind: to brainwash their own soldiers into breaking their moral code and then have no memory of it. There's a more simple explanation as to why soldiers came forward and said America was committing war crimes, and it has nothing to do with brainwashing, but instead that America was in fact committing war crimes. By having a drug that could cause a soldier to lose their memory, the government didn't have to worry about that soldier coming forward and revealing any secrets later on. This all lasted until 1962, when Sidney Gottlieb officially reported to his superiors that mind control and brainwashing were impossible. Though many people believe the CIA experiments with mind control and LSD still continued for some time after that. Gottlieb went on to design covert poisons for CIA assassinations, notably an assassination attempt against the president of the Congo, and several failed assassination attempts against Fidel Castro. In 1972, Sidney Gottlieb officially retired from the CIA. And while he planned on spending his retirement relaxing and putting his work behind him, it was only 1 year later that MKULTRA was revealed to the public. With public pressure from many Americans now believing that they were part of an illegal CIA experiment, along with Frank Olson's son now believing his father was murdered to keep MKULTRA a secret, Congress decided to investigate. In 1975, the Church Committee is set up to find out who exactly was responsible for MKULTRA, and Sidney Gottlieb would spend the rest of his retirement testifying in front of congressional hearings. In Kinzer's book, it's very clear that the CIA intended to make Gottlieb their fall guy, to pin this all on the work of one mad scientist, rather than an official program that was approved by even the top heads of the CIA. Charges were eventually brought against Gottlieb in 1998, but he later died in 1999, just a few months before the trial was set to begin. And to this day, no one else has ever been charged with a crime relating to MKUltra. So here's my takeaway from this book. In here are the events the CIA is willing to admit to. Stephen Kinzer isn't the type of author to speculate about what they're not willing to admit to, but more catalogs events to say this is a dark part of American history where our government betrayed our trust, and we shouldn't forget that. But what do you think? Do you still trust the government even though there was a time where they were experimenting on Americans using LSD? Or are you like me and you never really trusted the government to begin with? If you have an opinion, leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, subscribe to our channel, check out our podcast, and follow us on social media at Movies by McManus. I'm your host, Greg, and have a good night.